We were chatting for quite a bit backstage while we were killing time, waiting for everyone to get ready. But I wanted to draw your attention before we really get going to some breaking news today. You guys might be aware that Amazon have been working for a while on a Tomb Raider TV show, headed up by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, everyone's favorite actress turned, what would you even call her? Writer, I guess? Showrunner, maybe? Person who doesn't really do much but gets paid a lot of money for it. Anyway, well, who's going to play Lara Croft? That's the question. I believe we may have found our answer. And it's Sophie Turner, apparently, from Game of Thrones.
They're going through it?
Are they speculating on her, or is that confirmed?
They're kind of 98% of the way there. It says here, and this is from the Hollywood Reporter, so it's not like some random publication that's, conspiracy theory time. Yeah, Sansa Stark. A woman with all the charisma of a wet paper bag. Generally.
Oh, there you go. You beat me to it. I didn't know if that was going to be a hot take, but I was going to say, never been impressed with her acting at all. So
no, she had 8 seasons. 8 seasons, and she really didn't do anything. She was the weakest of all the Starks, in my opinion, and I never really saw anything special in her performances.
I think her character is generally quite a weak character. I think that's the way she's written. She's like this innocent, naive girl who is meant to, at a certain point, transform into a femme fatale. There's that one scene where she comes down the stairs talking to Littlefinger, and she's dyed her hair darker, and she's wearing edgy clothing. And then I think the next season they just said, "Nah, she can't."
They're just like, "Nah." She went back to being a victim 5 minutes later. That whole scene is so relevant. It's actually awkward if you look back at it.
She's just
you can tell she's not comfortable doing it.
She sucked as Jean as well. That was the issue for me.
Yeah, I remember them casting her. I was like, ugh, that's such a lame. She's the Game of Thrones lady, so we'll put her. She's just stiff, no matter where I've seen her. It's just been that wasn't very.
But it's not even that as well. Lara Croft, brunette, supposed to have big tits, supposed to be athletic. She's not any of those things.
Yeah, she doesn't fit that.
She's
part.
not.
There's things also they can dye her hair, so I don't care about that. But
they can. But I mean,
they could dye her hair. Get super into training for the role, and maybe they could do something else about that other thing. But
what about the boobs?
The physicality, I think you could fix with like Mauler says, she could put on muscle theoretically. Anyway, I mean, Alicia Vikander did it. It's just in terms of acting range and charisma to play Lara Croft.
Also her accent though, she's not a very good actor, and I don't
dye her.
I wouldn't trust her to be able to put on the stereotypical Lara Croft accent. It's quite, it's quite aristocratic, and she's not going to do that either. Is she?
There's a lot of casting choices that I find wacky sometimes. I'm like, all right, let's see them read a few lines, see what they can do. This is one where I'd be like, nah, it's all right.
We're living in a world where Colin Farrell in a fat suit is one of the greatest villains I've ever seen. So you never know anymore at this point. So I'll give her a chance. I think it's gonna be shit though. If I had to gamble on it, right?
Well, here's what they're saying, right? Tests for the role took place in October of this year, with several British actresses reportedly in the mix, including Turner. Mackenzie Davis was the lone American to make the shortlist. Emma McKay from Sex Education and Lucy Boynton from Bohemian Rhapsody was also said to have tested for the role. Amazon declined to comment, of course.
Mackenzie Davis would not make. That is right. She's the Terminator girl from Dark Fate. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's no, guys, no, all wrong. Stop. Wrong direction.
She makes Zendaya look like a model of feminine, voluptuous beauty.
She
can do the broomstick lady. Yeah, I remember her.
The lady who played Brienne in Game of Thrones. If you it's let's try her as Lara Croft. You're like, no. Look, there's plenty of women who can play Lara Croft. These are not selection.
It's kind of fascinating, really, to watch what's happened to these Game of Thrones actors, post Game of Thrones, because I feel like everyone tried to launch them as movie stars, and by and large, it did not work. I think. What was his name? The guy who played Rob probably came closest, I suppose, because he's
Tyrion, wouldn't you say? Dinklage? He's respected as an actor, I'd say, out of the rest of the cast.
He's again, I suppose he's got quite a niche series of roles that he can play, if you know what I mean.
True. I think every one of the Lannisters had potential. I'm a fan of all 4 of them. And we can talk until the man croaks that they're wasting Charles Dance. Like he's
well, yeah, but I mean, he was pretty well established already as an actor.
Was he though? Was he? I think he was like Tywin was.
He was
well known.
It's just in a way, Game of Thrones actually like ruined his career in the sense that he's just been stacked with hires for playing generals and captains and whoever else who just stands in a room going, "Go there, do this."
Him and Gus. Tywin and Gus have been just their last decade of
competing for being typecast, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's not to say that Charles Dance hasn't done some good shit post Game of Thrones. It's just that you kind of wish he didn't get This happens to actors all the time, but I will say, in Brooks's defense, I think a lot of people didn't know much about Charles Dance before Game of Thrones. A lot of people.
That's where I'm getting at. It's like for someone of that talent, it's a shame that he didn't get another role to really show his potential, because people will only really remember him for Tywin versus all the other things they could have.
Well, to illustrate it, when I saw him in Game of Thrones, I was like, "Oh, it's the guy from Alien 3. Cool."
Yeah. Clemens.
I'll always remember him as Benedict from Last Action Hero.
Yeah, that's fair too.
In a horrendous movie, like he really nailed it in every scene.
I think the one of the actors which came out on top in Game of Thrones, amazingly, out of all of them, was that woman that looks like she's been smashed in the face with a spade. The one
that's a lot of them.
Who?
I was going to say that doesn't narrow it down. Which
the girl in The Last of Us, right? She's a leading lady.
Oh yes, I should have known. Yes, she looks.
Oh yeah,
Bella Ramsey. Yeah, she actually.
She looks like
barely.
She looks like a 16th century painting of Henry VIII. But that's the best way I can describe her face.
She was only supposed to be in it for one scene, and her performance was so.
A 5-year-old had way too much Play-Doh and got asked to, sculpt their parent or something like that.
Well, I think a lot of people forgot she was. I think she was a Carstark, and she took over for their family, and then she was killed by a troll guy, the giant guy, right?
He squished her,
yeah, he squished her.
Well,
he squished her, and then she stabbed him in the eye, and then he died.
No, she was on Mormont. She was on Mormont, and once
Mormont, sorry,
once Jorah got the boot from Ned, she was the head of the family, even though she was young, and her performance was so good that they gave her more positions. But then they just went nuts, and suddenly she's fighting a giant, and it's like, what's going on here?
It's actually like difficult to recall the exact plot line of seasons 6, 7, 8 sort of thing, like how it all went.
That degree of retardation actually does something to your psyche, to the point where it scars you, and you have to try and forget it because it's damaging.
That's how I got started with this whole thing. So I'm like, the pain is so deep rooted that I can almost remember the details.
I was looking at the cast list. So if I try and narrow it down to, say, the younger actors who really got their big break with Game of Thrones, probably the best, or the one they tried to push hardest, was Emilia Clarke. Like, they tried to slot her into a number of different roles.
Yeah.
And they tried to, for some reason, they decided, she's going to be the next big action star. And like, you've got her appearing
so wrong.
Terminator Genesis.
Wrong.
And you didn't watch Secret Invasion, did you, Drinker?
I did not, and I'm glad about that.
That was the most painful one. That was so painful.
I disagree. Thibodeau was the most painful for me, but that's because Thibodeau means everything to me. So
in terms of her portrayal, but like actually going through the season, like we have to.
Secret Invasion is terrible though. Well, I was going to say it's the same thing. Like Drinker, you've already seen her performance in Secret Invasion because it's the same as Terminator. It's the same as what's the third one? There was a third one. Star Wars. That's
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Where she's just like bouncing between franchises, playing the exact same fucking character for some reason. Bland.
She's the third one, along with Gus and Tywin, where it's just such a waste.
But the thing is, at least their typecasting makes sense. You want authoritative figures or intimidating villains. Like, that makes sense. But for her, it's like, let's get her to play an intimidating action woman. You're like, what are you talking about? When she was what?
4'6".
Right?
The Hobbit.
She seems like generally quite a nice person. Like, she generally comes across quite well in interviews and stuff. So I've nothing against her. It's just like, and she's not an action star. Like, find a suitable like romantic comedy to put her in, or drama or something.
That's how it's always felt. But man, they kept trying to make it work. Didn't work out though. I don't even know if we're gonna see her again in the MCU.
No, I think at this point it's just like, is it you or is it the casting? It'd be like it's starting to get awkward, and I feel like a lot of the people who did this casting, they don't understand what made her character work in Game of Thrones. Like, she wasn't this barbarian like Viking warrior. She was a small, tiny lady who had 3 dragons. That was the main form of her strength, and it's the contrast with her characters what really made it work.
I think she got a little bit flanderized as well in Game of Thrones. Remember season 1, the performance is way more like she's going on an arc, but when she commits to it and does the whole like Dracarys, she like never stops.
Yeah. There's a specific scene in season 5 that I'll never forget because it was the moment I realized I was done with Daenerys. It was Jon Snow and the men, everyone at Castle Black freezing their dicks off, panicking over everything, and all this crazy shit that's going on. And then it cut to Daenerys on her way to Meereen and on a horse, like in the sun, and you just got everything. You got everything made for you. At some point, she just stopped having struggle, and her story just got really, really dull. And that is at the same time Jon became one of the most interesting characters on TV. So it just kind of sucked, and they committed to that all the way. Daenerys is one of the biggest tragedies of television. She is.
The people in chat were pointing out as well the rather obvious one, Pedro Pascal. I will say though, he didn't really get his break in Game of Thrones. Like he was well established, having done Narcos.
But what do you consider a
combination? A lot of people knew him from Narcos, and a lot of people knew him from. He was amazing as Oberyn. I don't want history to be rewritten on that. He had a huge impact. People loved him as Oberyn.
I think that's what blew him up the most, even if he was established before. Because that was my point with Tywin. Even if he's established, having something to really cement his legacy he missed out on. And I think Pedro, his career skyrocketed after Oberyn.
Well, what's annoying is like, he's just fucking everywhere, right? Like they don't know how that happened. I guess in a way, it's like a roulette wheel for a lot of these actors. They get pushed into a bunch of stuff, and if they so happen to end up in a bunch of successful things, then I guess it works out for them. But look at Jon Snow or I'm just scanning through their names, and I'm like, the rest of them, like all of them have been in really bad projects, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, Kit Harington, he's by and large failed at stuff. Maisie Williams, they tried to do her in the New Mutants. That was a flop. And
I've never even heard anyone talk about that. This movie even exists? Like it's a myth.
I'm beginning to doubt myself now that it happened, but I remember reviewing it. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I watched that film. It's like I'm one of like a dozen people in the world that's seen it. But yeah, I guess they tried to launch her. Like, who's the guy who played Rob? It's
Richard Madden, is it?
Yeah, Madden, yeah. I mean, he was in
He's a good actor.
The Eternals, and like he's been in a few TV shows and stuff that were quite successful over in the UK. So
it almost feels incestuous, doesn't it? The crossover is like Game of Thrones, MCU, Star Wars. You move around these all. If you're a famous actor, you just get in there at some point, do something, and then leave.
Yeah, I think so. For a lot of them, I suppose it's an opportunity. Like if you do get yourself into a big Marvel movie, it's like, well, that's going to get seen by millions of people, and it's a huge boon to your career.
Surely their agents recognize it's more than being in it. It's that they need to have at least one scene that's really emotional. They can show off their range. That's got to be it, right? Like it can't just be.
You think so? But this is the thing. Like a lot of these movie projects expose the fact that a lot of these actors aren't particularly good. Like it's really easy to hide in a pack of really talented actors, and like when it's a big ensemble cast like Game of Thrones, and maybe your particular scenes only last for a few minutes per episode, and you're playing off other really good people. It's like, well, you can hide a little bit, but when you have to carry a movie by yourself, that's when it really separates the wheat from the chaff. Sadly,
agreed, 100%. Game of Thrones was like one of the best examples of that for sure.
It's so cynical. Like, oh, we're having a new Star Wars movie, and there's going to be a big armored lady. Who's big lady right now? There's big lady in Game of Thrones. We'll get her. She's famous. Like,
Captain Phasma.
There's no substantive work being done. It's all just like, ugh.
They didn't even have. This is a stupid thing. Like, they could have just put a guy in that armor and just had her do the voiceover.
And
because, like, physically, you're not going to be able to tell the difference.
Well, story you can't either. She's barely in the movies.
She doesn't have a character. She piece of concept art that Kathleen saw on a table and said, "I want that in the movie." I think that was the story, and she literally doesn't have a character. The only bit of character that they had was cut the part with her and Finn that she basically is a coward, and
which is kind of lame, honestly. Just be like, she's actually a little bit embarrassed that she's the reason Starkiller Base got destroyed.
I know.
She's dead now anyway. You're like, okay.
Like,
I think that's still one of my favorite bits from your review, Mauler, where it's like you're playing the clips of Gwendolyn Christie trying to like talk about her character, and there's literally nothing to say.
Like she tried so hard, man.
There's nothing
to her
say.
Actions and her character. Okay.
What actions? What character? What are you talking about?
They just play a few clips of her laughing really awkwardly.
To this day, Mauler, your joke with Mauler, Your joke with Finn versus Phasma in your first TLJ video is one of my favorite jokes you've ever made. Just when you just completely just told Finn, just stop it, like just enough completely. Because just when he called her a chrome dome, it was that moment where you realize, okay, this is for 12-year-olds. This is for 12-year-olds. Like you've just fucked everything possible, and like the movie's not even done.